This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Haboim. Good to see everybody back. Welcome back from after Yom Tiv. It's wonderful to see everybody. Everyone should have a successful upcoming Zman. The Shiurim of Chodesh Nisan are sponsored by Reb Eli Babayev, Lila Nishmas, his father-in-law Avram Albert ben Yaminov Halevi ben Esther. Today's Shiur is dedicated by my good friend, Reb Kenny Pinsauer, Lila Nishmas, his father, whose yahrzeit is tonight, Chav Zayin Nisan, Yisrael Chaim ben Ephraim, his 6th yahrzeit. Reb Ephraim wrote the Sefer Enoid Movada in honor of his father's 1st yahrzeit. Tonight is the 6th yahrzeit. On this occasion, we wish that his Neshama Shamna Aliyah be a male tziosh for his whole family, for Simchas and Nachas, Gesund, Ad Biaska El Tzedek. Bruchim Habam to the Kol Agar de Pirka. We have a very interesting share today, very important share. I want to speak a little bit about the Lamdos and surprising machshava of the Zman of Sefiras HaOmer. I want to enter it in the following way. I would like to bring up the Mar Mekayma, so let me see if I can pull it up here. Okay, beautiful. There's an interesting question. We know we began counting Sefiras HaOmer on the 2nd night of Pesach, and surprisingly, the mitzvah of Sefira does not begin like almost all other mitzvahs. Typically, when we start a mitzvah for the first time, for example, when we light the menorah for the first time, we make a Shehechiyanu. When we sit in the sukkah for the first time, we make a Shehechiyanu. Whenever we reach an occasion in time, we always begin the Zman by saying Shehechiyanu v'kimanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. Hashem, we thank you that you have allowed us to remain alive, you sustained us, and you allowed us to reach this time. And Sefiras HaOmer, we just start counting the Omer, and we don't make a Shehechiyanu. Why do we not make a Shehechiyanu when we begin counting the Omer? I would like to share with you today 10 approaches to this question, and each approach will give us an insight into appreciating the Zman. So this is not just a question of halacha or lamdos, but also will give us a deeper appreciation for the Zman of Sefiras HaOmer. It will also allow us to be introduced to many Rishonim who we're not so familiar with, who were great masters of Torah. Let's begin with the Sefer HaItor. The Sefer HaItor was written by Rabbeinu Yitzchak ben Rabbeinu Abba Mori. He was born in Provence in 1122. He passed away in 1193 in Marseille. He says as follows: What's the reason we don't say Shehechiyanu when we start counting Sefira? The reason is Ella b'davar sheyesh by hana. We only say a Shehechiyanu on something that gives us pleasure, v'simcha, or happiness. K'goy netilas lulav, for example, taking the lulav. When we take the lulav, aside from the performance of a mitzvah, it also engenders happiness. Usmachtem lefnei Hashem lekeichem. There's a certain joy, there's a certain physical satisfaction or well-being or happiness that taking the Daled Minim engenders. Or Mikra Megillah, which is a man of Simcha. Or even Pidyon Haben, where a person's firstborn son has now come out of being in a category of being a Safek Nefel. If until a child is 30 days old, we don't know if the child is viable. And once a child turns 30 days old, then we know he is viable. So there's a certain simcha that the parents experience when the child turns 30. But Sefiras HaOmer, there's no hana, there's no simcha. It's not like you're shaking a beautiful item. It's not like it's a specially happy occasion. And therefore, there is no Shehechiyanu. Shehechiyanu is, thank you, we've reached this occasion. But the occasion has to be one of happiness and joy, not just a time. And therefore, no Shehechiyanu is warranted. That's the first answer, the answer of the Baal HaItor. We come to the Baal HaMa'ar. The Baal HaMa'ar, he has a number of questions. The Baal HaMa'ar says, first of all, why don't we make a Shehechiyanu? Second of all, maybe we shouldn't make a bracha on the second day of Pesach because, we don't even know if we should be counting the Sefira then. Maybe we should start the next day because of Sveika D'Yoma. Also, why don't we count Sefira Misveika D'Yoma every day? We should say Hayom, Achad Asar Yom, Ushmaina Asar Yom. Or like we do in the Karbanos of Musaf. We should say Hayom Achad Asar Yom, Shehem Shvua Echad V'Arba Yomim LaOmer, V'Yoy Yom Shneim Asar Yom, Shehem Shvua Echad V'Chamisha Yomim LaOmer. I mean, we don't really know what day it is. So Sveika D'Yoma, maybe we should count twice. And basically, the Baal HaOmer says to answer all the above questions. He says, "V'afal pi sha'anu moinim yamim hashvuos minhag hu b'yadeinu aval hatienu zman ein lanu." He says, counting Sefira is not d'oraisa. It's not even d'Rabbanan. It's only a zeicher l'mikdash. And you're not going to make a Shehechiyanu when you do a zeicher l'mikdash. I mean, when you did koirech, did you say Shehechiyanu v'kimanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh when you did koirech on the dat? No, you don't make a Shehechiyanu when you do a zeicher l'mikdash because it's just a zeicher. No Shehechiyanu is warranted on a zeicher l'mikdash. So that's the approach of the Baal HaOmer, that the mitzvah of Sefira is only in commemoration of what happened in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, and therefore no Shehechiyanu is warranted. That's the second answer. Answer number 3. Answer number 3, we're going to be introduced to a very important sefer. The name of the sefer is the Tzrar Hamar. Tzrar Hamar was written by Rabbi Avram Saba. Rabbi Avram Saba was one of the Gerushe Sfarad. He lived a very tragic life. He had children that were nebuch, baptized and forcibly kidnapped and baptized that he never saw again. Also, his manuscripts, he had to bury them and rewrite them from memory. But he was a great Mekubal, Rabbi Avram Saba. By the way, you could get his Svarim in English. Rabbi Monk translated the works of Rabbi Avram Saba into English, and Rabbi Avram Saba says in the Tzrar Hamar on Parsha Emor, he says the revealed reason why we don't make a Shehechiyanu is because what do we say in Sefira? We say this is counting the Omer from the time that they were makriv the Karban Omer. And we say, if only God could restore the actual service of the Beis HaMikdash, when we could really bring the Karban Omer. When the Beis HaMikdash stood, we were makriv the Karban Omer. And now that the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, we only remember it. And that's sort of full of worry and sadness that we don't have an actual Beis HaMikdash. And we ask Hashem, in your infinite mercy, please restore the Beis HaMikdash. So how could we simultaneously express sorrow and sadness that the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed and say, Shehechiyanu v'kimanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh? I mean, it's sort of similar to the Baal HaOmer, but it's a different nakuda. It's not that we can't make a Shehechiyanu on something that's only minhag or zeicher l'mikdash. It's sort of self-contradictory. How could you, on the one hand, be mourning your state and say, "Oh Hashem, thank you for bringing me to this state"? I mean, are you happy about where you are in life, or you're not happy? On the one hand, you say, Rebbeinu Shalom, if only you could rebuild Beis HaMikdash. But I'm happy about this day. What do you mean you're happy about this day? You just asked me to take you away from this day. You just asked me to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash, to bring you to better times, to Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem, to bring you to different days. So simultaneously you're going to say, Shehechiyanu, that you brought me to this day? So it would be incongruous to thank Hashem for keeping you and bringing you to this day when you don't want this day. You want the Beis HaMikdash to be built. That's the third approach. Let me share with you a fourth approach. I want to introduce it with the following question. There's a very difficult Ramban. We've discussed this Ramban many, many times over the years. The Ramban in Masechta Kedushin, when listing the mitzvah saseh she'ein hazman grama, the Ramban lists Sefiras HaOmer. Among the mitzvahs that say she'en hazman grama, that women are chayivin. And everyone asks on the Ramban, Sefiras HaOmer is not zman grama? There is no mitzvah that is more zman grama than Sefiras HaOmer. Sefiras HaOmer is the very epitome and definition of a mitzvah that is governed by time. You can only do it at night, and you can only do it at a certain time of the year, and you're counting days. So the Avnei Nezer, the Rebbe of Sachachav, offers the following chiddush to explain why women would be chayiv in Sefiras HaOmer. He says, when do you start counting the Omer? You start counting the Omer on the 16th of Nisan. Wrong. You don't start counting them on the 16th of Nisan. So when do you start? You start the day after Pesach. It's not the 16th of Nisan, it's Mimachras HaShabbos, which means the mitzvah of counting the Omer is connected to Pesach. It's dependent on Pesach. Now, the mitzvahs of Pesach, women are chayivin. Women are not allowed to eat chametz. Women have to eat matzah. According to Sefer HaChinuch, he surprisingly says women have to eat mesaper b'yitzias Mitzrayim. So since women are chayiv in all the mitzvahs of Pesach, and the mitzvah of Sefira is not dependent on the 16th day of Nisan, it's the day after Pesach. So just like women are chayiv in all the mitzvahs of Pesach, they're chayiv in Sefira, because you start counting Sefira mimachras haPesach. Okay? That's the chiddush of the Avnei Nezer. Now, it's a very difficult approach to answer up the Ramban, because the Ramban doesn't say women are chayiv in Sefira. He says it's ein zman grama. And what the Avnei Nezer says is, even though in fact Sefira might be zman grama, but it's a zman that women are chayiv in. But be it as it may, this will introduce very well the next approach to why we don't make a Shehechiyanu on Sefira. And this is the approach of Meiri and Shibalei Haleket, and I believe the Matei Moshe. And he says as follows. He says, Shalu harishonim ibnei mayin mavarchin zman al habir. Why don't we make Shehechiyanu on bir chametz? Right? It's not like you do bir chametz every day. Hol uz mizman lizman, but it comes periodically. And if you're going to say, well, I could check whenever I want, I could check up to 30 days before, and therefore we don't say Shehechiyanu, but you can make a sukkah whenever you want also. So the Meiri says that in his opinion, any mitzvah that is not for itself, but rather to keep you away from an avera, like b'dikas chametz, is so that you don't come to eat chametz, you're not going to make a bracha of Shehechiyanu. But why don't you make a Shehechiyanu on Sefira? He says, you do. You made a Shehechiyanu on Pesach, on the first day, right? When Pesach came, you made a Shehechiyanu in Kiddush. So you're happy. Hashem, thank you for bringing Pesach. Part of Pesach is Sefiras HaOmer. What? Sefiras HaOmer is not linked to Pesach. Sefiras HaOmer is the 16th day of Nisan. No, we just brought from Avnei Nezer. The Torah doesn't say you count Sefira on the 16th of Nisan. You count Sefira the day after Pesach. So the mitzvah of Sefira is nichlal, it's incorporated in the Sefira you made on the Yom Tov of Pesach. Okay, this fits very well into the idea that women are chayiv in Sefira according to Ramban. Again, we don't necessarily paskin that way. The Mishnah Berurah says women should not count Sefira. You know that? The Mishnah Berurah says women should not make a bracha on Sefira. Number one, the Mishnah Berurah says they'll probably forget. Number two, the Mishnah Berurah says they don't understand the words that they're saying, so their counting is meaningless. Rav Asher Weiss writes that Bizman Hazeh, both of these concerns perhaps are not applicable. Maybe women will remember. There are all kinds of reminders. Maybe they'll remember better than men. Furthermore, to that I would say as follows. Men don't have a choice. They have to count. So the fact that they might forget, well, they have to try their best not to because they're obligated. Women who are not obligated, perhaps they have to be concerned they may forget. Regarding the other concern that women don't understand, that might have been 200 years ago, when in Europe women did not have a formal Jewish education other than what they learned in their homes from their mother. Nowadays, that every observant girl goes to a Beis Yaakov school, so that doesn't necessarily apply. Okay, but be it as it may, let's try to explain this further. Because what the Meiri is saying is that the reason we don't make a Shehechiyanu on Sefira is because we made a Shehechiyanu on the Yom Tov of Pesach. But question, you made a Shehechiyanu on Matzah despite the fact that you made a Shehechiyanu on the Pesach, and you'll make a Shehechiyanu on Shofar even though you made a Shehechiyanu on Rosh Hashanah, and you make a Shehechiyanu on the Sukkah even though you already made a Shehechiyanu on Sukkos. So why is Sefiras HaOmer automatically part of the Shehechiyanu of Pesach? Yeah, good question. So the Shibolei Halakhet says regarding this question, he says the reason you don't make a Shehechiyanu is because you made a Shehechiyanu on the Yom Tov itself. Sukkah and Lulav are not niftar with the Zman of the Yom Tov. He said, well, Sukkah and Lulav are different. Because technically you could have made the Sukkah before Sukkos and made a Shehechiyanu then on the Asiyas HaSukkah. Or you could have been Ma'agid your Lulav before Sukkos and made the Shehechiyanu then. But the mitzvah of Sefira is only on Yom Tov. I would have asked, what about Matzah? Matzah you can't eat before. Or Shofar you can't blow before. Well, he says Sukkah and Lulav and Shofar have a Maisa, so therefore they will not be exempt. But Sefira, there's no Maisa, so therefore Sefira is exempt with the bracha on the Yom Tov. Interesting, the Matei Moshe, Talmud of the Marshal, also says a very similar idea, that since Sefiras HaOmer is not a Maisa, it is exempt with the regular Shehechiyanu that you make on the Yom Tov. So that was the fourth approach. Approach number 5. Look at number 7 on your sheet. The Maharam Mitz. He says, how could you make a Shehechiyanu? Maybe you're going to forget a day and it's going to be a bracha levatala. So you'll ask, so then how could you ever make a bracha on Sefira? Maybe you'll forget a day and it will be a bracha levatala. No, in other words, you hear what he's saying? He's saying you can't make a Shehechiyanu because you might forget a day. Yeah, but how could you ever make a bracha on Sefira? You might forget a day. I guess the Shehechiyanu is definitely going on the mitzvah of Sefira, which is all 49 days. As opposed to each night might be a separate component of the mitzvah, but the Shehechiyanu will be going on the whole thing. Or you could say that Shehechiyanu, it's a reshus. You don't have to make a Shehechiyanu. So how could you take a chance when you might forget a day? As opposed to a Birchas HaMitzvah is not reshus, something you need to do. And therefore, we do it. Okay, that's answer number 5. Answer number 6 is the most fascinating of all the answers. Probably, if you wouldn't be here today, you would not encounter this idea. And this is a very important idea that you should be aware of. We know Minhag Yisrael is we don't shave during the Yimei Sefira, we don't take haircuts, we don't listen to music. Why? It's a time of mourning. What are we mourning for? We're accustomed to thinking we're mourning the students of Rabbi Akiva. Could someone tell me what happened before the students of Rabbi Akiva died? Then they did shave and they did listen to music? Presumably, yes. However, that is totally not true. And the reason given because the students of Rabbi Akiva passed away, that is only what we tell people, but it's not the real reason. So what's the real reason? It's a good thing you came to the shiur today. And with that, I'm going to change the batteries and keep you in suspense. The suspense is over. Comes Rabbeinu Yerucham. Rabbeinu Yerucham, number 8 on your sheet. Rabbeinu Yerucham was born in Provence in 1280. He passed away in Toledo in 1350. He wrote the Sefer Adam L'Chava. Adam speaks about the halachos of birth until marriage. Chava, from marriage until death. Ask Rabbeinu Yerucham. By the way, the Chidah brings down a tradition that anyone who republishes either the Sefer of the Baal HaYitur, number 1, or number 8, Rabbeinu Yerucham, will die young. So there was a Talmud Chacham a number of years ago who had the opportunity to rework and republish the Svarim of the Rabbeinu Yerucham. And he went to ask Rabbi Ovadia Yosef if he should do it. In light of the comments of the Chidah, Rabbi Ovadia told him to do it. He started doing it, and very unusual things began happening in his family. People were hospitalized, so he went back to Rabbi Ovadia, and he said, I don't know, should I do this? Should I be doing this? So Rabbi Ovadia said, are you afraid? So he said, if the Rebbe tells me not to be afraid, I won't be afraid. He says, on my shoulders. So what do you mean? But the Chidah says there's a tradition that if somebody reworks the Svarim of Rabbeinu Yerucham, they will die young. Says Rabbi Ovadia, the Chidah said he heard it from Zakenim. Those Zakenim were not correct. Anytime you have the opportunity to teach Torah, to make Torah available, you need to do it on my shoulders. And the person, in fact, published Rabbeinu Yerucham, and he was protected. Anyway, in any event, Rabbeinu Yerucham writes as follows. Rabbeinu Yerucham writes that the reason we do not make a Shehechiyanu on Sefira, first he says there's no Hana and there's no Simcha. But then he says something astounding. He says that the word HaOmer comes from barley. Like it says, V'im takriv minchas bikurim lashem. And this im is not if, but obligatory. Like im kesef talva, you have to lend money. And therefore, since it's the carbon HaOmer suggests that it comes from barley, midas hadin. And it says about the HaOmer, aviv, that it's ripe, and it says ki ha-se'oira aviv. And that refers to the carbon soita that comes from se'oirim. Se'oirin, so since the carbon HaOmer comes from barley, se'oirin, and se'oirin is a lashon of tornado, se'ara. Therefore, it is a time of midas hadin. The time of the HaOmer is a time of midas hadin. Therefore, we don't get married and we don't take haircuts. Nothing to do with the Talmid of Rabbi Akiva. Nothing to do with that. That's not the reason. The reason is the Zaman of the HaOmer is a time of storm winds, of midas hadin. And the Eliyazuta says, really, according to this reason, if it has nothing to do with the students of Rabbi Akiva, you shouldn't be allowed to take a haircut on Lag BaOmer. He says, really, you're not allowed to, but it's a minhag, so you could do it. Comes at Srar Hamar, Rabbi Avram Saba, and he says that the reason we count Sefiras HaOmer in the nighttime, even though, it's interesting, all mitzvahs we do during the day, what mitzvah do we ever do at night? Mila is the day. Hallel is the day. Shofar is only the day. Lulav is only the day. Every mitzvah is only the day or also the night. When do you ever have a mitzvah that's only the night? By the way, except for Pesach. Now this fits well into what we're saying, that the mitzvah of the HaOmer is nichlal and the mitzvah is a Pesach. That's why women are chayiv. That's why we don't make a Shehechiyanu. So it's really, it it fits well into the idea that the mitzvah of the HaOmer is nichlal in the mitzvahs of Pesach. But be it as it may, says the Tzvar Hamar, the reason we do it at night is because we need to dampen, we need to soften the midas hadin, which is prevalent in the nighttime. That's why we say, Usfartem lachem, do it for your own benefit. Lachem, like lech lecha, lahanoscha, for your pleasure, to be machnia, to subdue the midas hadin. And because it's Yemei Hadin, we have to show tsar, we can't take a haircut. The Gemara says because of the students Rabbi Akiva died at night. That's the revealed reason, but it's not the real reason. The Tama Nistar is because the HaOmer is Midas Hadin. That's why you can't take a haircut, to show sadness. They say that from Lag BaOmer and on, you're allowed to take a haircut because the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. First of all, Tosfos says that really they died the 33 days of the week. If you count from the second day of Pesach till Shavuos, there are 33 Yemei Chayil, besides Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh and Pesach. And the truth is, really, says the Tzar Amar, you shouldn't be allowed to take a haircut until Shavuos. And that's the Kabbalistic approach. By the way, those who follow Arizal, they don't take a haircut the whole Sefira. But until Lag BaOmer is the Toikef Hadin, and the remez is Eid Hagal Hazeh, and it has nothing to do with the students of Rabbi Akiva. The students of Rabbi Akiva is what we tell people, but it's not the actual reason. The actual reason is because it's man of din. Now we understand, says the Tzar Amar, why we don't make a Shehechiyanu. It's a zman of din. How could you make a Shehechiyanu? So this is a new reason that is virtually unknown. It's a aspect of Sefira which is virtually unknown, and it's a reason why we don't make a Shehechiyanu, which is really not known, and that is the Yemei HaOmer are Midas Hadin, irrespective of the students of Rabbi Akiva. Or you could say, really it's Midas Hadin. The reason why the students of Rabbi Akiva passed away during this man is because they died during a period which was already well established as Zman Hadin. Now, why is it a Zman Hadin? So the Tzvar Hamar explains further. He explains that the Kabbalah Satar is the end of 50 days. And the Torah is a fiery law. And all of its words are like fire. And it was given in fire. And it was harvested in barley, which represents Midas Hadin of the very fiery element of Torah, the storm wind of Torah. Let's see, do we have another sheet here? Only one sheet? Okay, let me see if I can send you the other sheet. So this is the reason of the Tzvar Hamar. Really an amazing, a frightening reason, an unknown reason, but an important reason to be aware of. This is the Chiddush of the Rabbeinu Yerucham. So this is already found in Rishonim, quoted by the Elia Zuta, and also discussed by the Sefer Tzvar Hamar. So this is really something eye-opening. Let me see if I could get you the second sheet here. Oh, here we go. Gewaldic. Okay. Sheet number 2. So that is the reason of the Sefer Tzvar Hamar, by the way. Okay, fine. Now let's propose a seventh approach. Why we don't make a Shehechiyanu on the mitzvah of Sefiras HaOmer. This comes from Mahara Kleisner, quoted by the Matei Moshe. he says that we didn't really finish the mitzvah yet. And therefore, Sefiras HaOmer, in a way, is not the actual mitzvah, but rather it's machshirei mitzvah. It's just the preparation of the mitzvah. He says, "Mahari kloizner nasan tam mishum da adayin lo have a gemar ha mitzvah umechshav machshirei mitzvah ki hu b'shvil ha shvuos." In other words, somehow the mitzvah of Sefira is merely a preparation for the Yom Tif of Shavuos. And a similar approach is found in the Orchos Chaim Rav Aaron of Lunel, born in Narbonne, Provence. In 1306, he was exiled from France. Often he was not able to respond to shoyalim because of his very worrisome traveling. He writes, "Tam lama in mavarchin shehechiyanu al biur chametz." Why do we make a shehechiyanu on biur chametz Sefiras HaOmer? He says we only make a shehechiyanu if the objective of the mitzvah, elam kein hamechuvan min ha-mitzvah nase bizman ha-bracha, was made at the time of the bracha. Hilkach ein levarcha al biur chametz. You're not going to make a bracha al biur chametz when you search for chametz, because the objective of searching is burning, but you're not doing it then, so you can't make a shehechiyanu. So too for Sefiras HaOmer, the kivun of Sefira is to get to Shavuos. So since the objective of Sefira is to get to Shavuos, we're not going to make the bracha until Shavuos. This is a general klal when it comes to all shechiyanus. Okay, so that's another reason. Okay, listen carefully. It's because we're not going to make a shehechiyanu on a mitzvah if the objective of the mitzvah is not accomplished until much later on. The Tzrar Hamar offers a very similar answer. Again, the Nakuda we just said was that since the objective of Sefira is for the Yom Tif of Shavuos, and it's not accomplished at the time of the count, therefore we don't make a shehechiyanu. The Tzar Hamar says similarly, he says, "V'oid ki zois ha-Sefira hi l'tzarech hamoyed." Since Sefira is for Shavuos, therefore, not that we're not going to make a shehechiyanu because it's for something else, but it will be incorporated in the shehechiyanu on Shavuos. By the way, it comes out something very interesting. According to the Meiri and the Shibolei Haleket and the Matei Moshe, that the reason we don't make a shehechiyanu on Sefira is because the shehechiyanu on Pesach covers Sefira. Then l'chayra, when you make a shehechiyanu on Pesach, you should be mechavein that the shehechiyanu should exempt you, should cover the mitzvah of Sefiras HaOmer. Now, whoever thinks that? You ever hear such an announcement? So I'm reminding you now, I'm sure you remember, next year when you make Kiddush, the first night of Pesach, have in mind, by the way, maybe you could say the shehechiyanu you make the second night of Pesach, you should have in mind the Sefira. But now we're saying, according to the Tzar Hamar, since the purpose of Sefira is to get to Shavuos, the shehechiyanu you're going to make on Shavuos will pater the Sefiras HaOmer. So at least that you could still have in mind when we come to the Yom Tif of Shavuos and you make a shehechiyanu, the shehechiyanu you're going to say on the Yom Tif of Shavuos should exempt the mitzvah of Sefiras HaOmer. By the way, and then the Tzar Hamar repeats the idea that the Torah is an Eish Das and it was given through an Eish Oichla. And during these 7 weeks, we have to put to rest the Midas Hadin. And so it's all for the Yom Tif of Shavuos, therefore we rely on the Sefira of Shavuos. The Levush likewise says that we don't make a bracha on Sefira because the Sefira is L'tzarech, the regel of Shavuos. Answer number 9. He says, what does counting mean? Counting means, I can't believe that day is not here yet. I'm missing something. I'm counting towards something I don't have. The Bal HaKedah, quoted by the Matei Moshe, number 16, this is the 9th approach. Counting reflects tsar, missing, and the joy you'll experience when you get it. That's why you count when a person's tameh. When will I finally be tahar? When will I finally be able to eat taharos? And because the whole purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim was to be makabel the Torah, like the pasuk says, "V'hitziaches ha'ami Mitzrayim, ta'avdun es Elokim al hahar hazeh." So the Sefira is to show, as glad as we are that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, but we want to demonstrate, we want to remember in every generation, at the beginning of Sefira, that because the Torah is so great, we didn't get it right away. Until we separated ourselves from the Tumah of Mitzrayim, and we counted 7 weeks to remove our idolatrous influence, just like somebody who counts time to be matahar themselves. Bottom line is, says the Akedas Yitzchak, and the Levush says similarly, and the Mincha Belula, a Talmud of the Rajah, also says, counting denotes tsar. Shehechiyanu denotes simcha. You can't make a Shehechiyanu on a mitzvah that by definition is an experience of distress. The whole reason we count is we're distressed, we're not there. So Shehechiyanu, similar to the first answer, but it's Shehechiyanu reflects simcha, but you can't make a bracha of simcha on a mitzvah that by definition is a mitzvah of tsar, that we're distressed, that we're not yet at the day that we're hoping for. And the 10th answer, and the reason why I'm calling it the 10th is it's almost identical to the 9th, but it wouldn't be, you can't have a shiur, the 9 reasons. It always has to be 10. So, whether you agree that this is a little bit of a different point or not, this is something enunciated by the Kedushas Levi, but basically what we just read in the Akedas Yitzchak and the Levush is the same reason. And that is, what is Shehechiyanu articulating? Thank you, Hashem, that you brought me to this Zman. Yeah, but the whole mitzvah of Sefira is, when am I going to get to that Zman? The whole purpose of Sefira is, when am I going to get to a different time? So you're going to thank Hashem. Thank you, Hashem, for bringing me to this time so I could do a mitzvah where I'm going to say that I wish I was at a different time. No, it would be a dichotomy, it would be self-contradictory to make a Shehechiyanu on the mitzvah of Sefira where the whole purpose is, Hashem, when am I going to get to a different time? You can't say, thank you Hashem for now so I could do the mitzvah of asking when it's going to be later. So it's not. So I believe in all honesty that this is a little bit of a different nekuda. The nekuda of that Kedas Yitzchak is Sefira. The mitzvah of Sefira is an expression of tsar. I'm distressed that I'm not yet at the objective of Kabbalas HaTorah. I know Hashem, you took me out of Mitzrayim, but the purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim was not to be liberated. It was for Kabbalas HaTorah. I'm distressed about that. That's the whole purpose of counting Sefira. So you can't make a Shehechiyanu if it's a time of tsar. But what Rabbi Yitzchak is saying is that by very definition, the mitzvah of Sefira is longing for a different zman. So how could you say Shehechiyanu v'kimanu v'higiyanu lazeman hazeh? Let's read this inside. This is a drush of Rabbi Yitzchak Barditchev on Parshas Nosei. He says, Nira levar. Al kol ha-mitzvahs mitaryag mitzvahs mavarchen Shehechiyanu. Why do we always make a Shehechiyanu? V'al mitzvah Sefiras HaOmer ein mavarchen Shehechiyanu. It says we find in the writings of the Arizal and the pasuk Ta'avdun es Elokim al har hazeh that we know when the Jewish people were in Mitzrayim, we were immersed in the 49 levels of Tumah, and God in His infinite mercy redeemed us to bring us Tachas Kanfei Ashchina, and therefore we had to count Zayin Nekiyim. Otherwise, it would not be possible to come Tachas Kanfei Ashchina. This is the deeper meaning of Ta'avdun es Elokim. Ta'avoid nun. We're going to work for 50 days. So we're always yearning. Masai avoy ve'eraya. When am I going to get to? When am I going to get to? When am I going to get to the 50th day? So I'm going to make a Shehechiyanu. Right? Meaning we're always saying, if only the time of Sefira could pass in a moment. If there would be a way to pass the 49 days in 1 minute, we would love to do that. Ma'toiv ma'anoim. So how can you say Shehechiyanu? Lazman hazeh, where the whole mitzvah is to get to a zman acher. So to sum up the executive summary of the 10 reasons we don't make a Shehechiyanu. Number 1, the Baal HaItur says there's no hana. You only make a Shehechiyanu on a mitzvah that has hana. Number 2, the Baal HaOmer. It's only a minhag. It's only a zeicher. You don't make a Shehechiyanu on a minhag. Number 3, the Tzrar Hamar. It's a time of tsar. We're saying we're doing this mitzvah from the time of the Karban HaOmer, and we wish we could actually be makriv the Omer. Okay, so then it's you can't say thank you Hashem for bringing me to this time when we're yearning for a time that the Beis Hamikdash is built, and we say, and we're even articulating harachamanu yachzir lanu avos Beis Hamikdash kaima. Number 4, it's part of the Yom Tov of Pesach. The Shibbolei Halak, it says, the Meiri says, the Matei Moshe says. Namely, and therefore it's exempt with the Shehechiyanu of Pesach. We pointed out, perhaps according to that, you should be mechavein to when you make the Shehechiyanu on Pesach for the mitzvah of Sefiras. Number 5, how could you make a Shehechiyanu? You might forget a day. How do you ever make a bracha? We said, well, maybe Shehechiyanu, which is not outright required, we have to be concerned. Number 6, which was the most astounding reason of all, and that is that the time of the Omer in preparation for Kabbalas HaTorah is a zaman of Midas Hadin, irrespective, nothing to do with the students of Rabbi Akiva. That's the revealed reason, but not the secret reason. Number 7, the Mahara Kloizner, it's only Hechsher mitzvah, where you're not fulfilling the objective of the mitzvah now. Number 8, the purpose of Sefira is to get to Shavuos, and therefore it is exempted with the Shehechiyanu of Shavuos. Number 9, we're counting because we're betzar that we're not yet at Kabbalas HaTorah. You can't make a Shehechiyanu on something which is a gesture of tsar. And finally, it would be a dichotomy. While you're counting to get to another time, it would be a dichotomy to say, thank you Hashem for bringing me to this time. Okay, Rabbi Isai, thank you for joining today. I want to thank again Kenny Pinsauer for sponsoring the Shiur Lilu Nishmas, his father, on the occasion of his 6th yard site, Lilu Nishmas Yisrael Chaim ben Ephraim. And I wish everybody bracha v'hatzlacha. And kol tov, everybody should be zoicha to do the proper hachanois, so that we're makabel the Torah bi'ahava. Just to add to the final reason, we pointed out that the whole mitzvah of Sefira is yearning for another time. The Kazhin Tzar says that this is merumas in the pasuk. Sama nafshi le'lokim lekeil chai. Our soul thirsts. Lekel Chai. Kel is 31. Chai is 18, 49. The 49 days of Sefira are a thirsting to be able to experience Masai Avai ve'eiraya Pnei Elokim, when we will merit to behold the countenance of Hashem on the 50th day of the Sefira. Okay, Rabbi, say have a wonderful day. Bracha v'atzlacha.
Can Rav send me my comment?
Yeah, bli neder. I'll try right now. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Kol tov.
Thank you.
Kol tov. Kol tov.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.